Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the joint meeting this afternoon. I will open up the commissioners meeting at this time. If Owen, if you'd like to open up the Board of Education.
I'd like to call this special meeting of the Castle County Board of Education to order.
Thank you. At this time, we'll have a moment of silent prayer and then we'll do the pledge of allegiance. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Miller, would you like to take it over now? Take over the question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I understand that the Board of Education has a presentation that may answer most of the questions, maybe not in order, but may answer most of the questions that were asked. So if it pleases the board at this time, I'll turn it over to Mr. Terrell, and he can go through the presentation for the Board of Education.
Okay.
Thank you, Brian. Chairman McVeigh, Chairman Owen, thank you for this opportunity to make this presentation this evening. I am Andy Terrell, I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Castle County Schools. Dr. Carter could not be here this evening. With me tonight are Jeremy Teeter, Castle County Schools Finance Contractor, Carol Bowes, who's passing out your presentation at this time. She's the Elementary and AIG Director. Medina Jones, who's the Secondary and CTE Director, and Dr. Carla Murray, who is the Director of Human Resources. Again, we did receive your questions and we put it in a presentation that we will go through. All questions have been answered that you requested. It just might not be in the order that you submitted them to us, but they are all answered. At the conclusion of this presentation, if you have additional questions, if you could submit those to Ms. Kimberly or staff to respond in writing, that would be great. Again, thank you for this opportunity, and we will get started with the first question that was submitted to us by the Board of Education, and that goes to Ms. Jones for answer that response.
Good evening. If you open your package, you can see the first question from the commissioners to the Board of Education. And that is that BYSHS has had an average reading proficiency of 30 to 34% and an average math proficiency of 30 to 34%. How many students will graduate with these proficiencies? And so the response is, as required by Caswell County Schools Board of Education, students must earn 27 credits to graduate. Students earn credits when courses are passed. When students meet the graduation requirements set by the NC Board of Education and the Caswell County Schools Board of Education, they are permitted to graduate. Caswell County Schools continue to celebrate increased graduation rates at the highest since we researched, which was 2006. The graduation rate is currently 85.4%. So in traditional high school students in Caswell County and high school students in public schools and public charters across the state must complete required reading summative assessments. This assessment is regularly given during a student's sophomore or junior year. Therefore, students receive additional instruction prior to reading proficiency levels after the first test administration. So in short, there isn't a senior state proficiency assessment to determine the proficiency levels of reading for a state percentage report. Therefore, the reading proficiency levels are not demonstrative of graduating senior levels. Caswell County School seniors are graduating from Caswell County schools and not dropping out of Caswell County schools at a higher rate than previous years, which is indicative of collaborative support from Caswell County employees, parents, and community members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
excuse me, can I ask a question during the presentation?
Yes, sir.
I just heard what you said now, and I was reading along with you. I guess my question is, if we have a 34% proficiency rate, notwithstanding whatever the state requires, it seems to me that somewhere or another, we're doing these students a disservice if they can't read. If the other 60-some% can't read once they graduate.
So in short, when, and I can't validate right now what the reading percentages are because we are going through testing. At this point, students are testing, but when students are taking this test, they have additional years of reading support and math support beyond when the state's taking the summative assessments.
So, and I guess this is to any staff member, board member. What do you think the proficiency rate is roughly?
Well, I would not be able to answer that only because, for instance, we have students who test today, okay? And we also have state board certification that occurs in September. So right now, we're going through preliminary scores. We hope that the scores will be, that they will be increased.
Okay. So one final question on that subject. What were the proficiency rates last year?
Well, I don't know those, I'm sorry, off the top of my head.
Anybody know?
Yeah, but we can get that information for you, so.
No, because that begs the question
Okay.
for what I wanted to ask, for what I'm trying to ask. If nobody has an idea of what last year's proficiency rate was, then in reading, then I kind of have a problem with that.
Mr. Hall, can I tag team, please? So the reading proficiency rate that is published by the state, I think it's here at our table. Those rates are based on that one-day test, the EOG. They encourage us to use other data points versus, I mean, all of us probably know a child that experiences test anxiety and a lot of other things. So they encourage us to look at a lot more data points than just the reading test. I know we have supplemental programs and that will diagnose like where a child's breakdown is in reading. And it is not just Caswell County, it is a rural school problem, but it's not just Caswell County. The state of North Carolina is going to have every elementary teacher, which is, it's one of the things listed in the next answer. They're going to have every elementary teacher in the state last year and next year going through a letters training. It will actually take 2 years. There's a lot of reading research out there. Teachers aren't taught these different scientific ways to teach reading and scientifically all the different areas to look at. We have offered a mini course in that in Haskell County, some for elementary teachers. But what the state has invested in is a 2 years worth of training. And right now statewide, they also recognize that students are going up past 3rd grade with maybe not some of the basic reading capabilities that they need. And so even all of our elementary teachers in K-5 are going to start next year on a 2-year course called Letters. But beyond that course, there are a lot of things we look at besides the test. I'm going to speak as an educational professional and maybe not even speaking for the board, but I will speak for myself. As a teacher for a great number of years, I get that one score that comes from that test. I'm devastated. I have some kids who are devastated that they thought they were going to score a lot higher, maybe should have. However, in order to help them, the best data doesn't come from that one test. It comes from all the other programs and the other things that we have to look at. Because, and again, I can't put words in the state of North Carolina, but they do like to use that kind of as a leveling for us to look at as a gauge, but that shouldn't be the one and only and single gauge. And we encourage teachers and train them very regularly all the time on what other things can you look at so we can figure out where the gap is, because that one test doesn't give us exactly where the gap is. I hope that helps.
And we can get that information for you, so.
Yeah, are we ready to keep going? Well, then the next question, I kind of dug into that a little bit, but the questions from the commissioners, what is the district going to do to correct these proficiencies? We do try to continuously provide and support teachers by providing the curriculum that's going to teach what's on the test, teach them best instructional practices, give them resources, give them assessments that can align and try and increase the mastery of the skills that students need for the test. We are trying and working to increase proficiency percentages all the way from elementary, middle to high school. I was just touching on the professional development. We constantly look at what do we need to continue to give teachers and focus on rigor and literacy and analyzing student data. The elementary teachers are going to participate in the letters training. That stands for Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. It will provide educators and administrators. They're having administrators go through it too, with a deep knowledge to be literacy and language experts and how students acquire reading skills. So I know I'm doing a lot of talking about K-5 and what's going to happen at K-5, and we're not ignoring 6-8 but K-5 is kind of a gateway. As students get into middle school and they start to have to read multi-syllable words, they have to have those basics from K-5. And then there is another leveling that happens at high school if that foundation wasn't laid well. That's one of the reasons the state is going back and having every teacher in the state take all this training. They realize that it's kind of been an ongoing problem for a while, and it's not isolated to Castle. Students also have the opportunity to participate in tutoring sessions during the regular school year all year to support their mastery of skills and try and increase our proficiency rates. Teachers analyze data regularly, like I had mentioned just a minute ago. But I would also say that it's not on this sheet, but we worked really hard too to try and figure out what do we need to do to retain teachers. With the districts around us offering a supplement, that's become difficult. And every time we have a new teacher, then you're starting all over again in your training process. And it feels like you're going backwards, and you want everybody to keep moving forward with you. So the more we can do to focus in on that area is going to help a lot. I'm sorry. Now.
That's perfectly fine. I agree 100%. In addition to that, Castle County Schools will continue to provide remediation and tutoring, as well as summer learning opportunities for students to increase skill acquisition. Summer learning provided this summer will begin June 13th to June 28th and July 11th to July 28th, Monday through Thursday. It will include 6 weeks of math, science, reading, learning opportunity in grades K through 12. Eligible K-8 students can receive up to 6 weeks of support. Eligible students in grades K through 3 are able to receive reading support from the integrated summer reading camp. High school students are afforded opportunities for credit recovery and credentialing opportunities throughout summer programming. To afford students more opportunities for success, Caswell County Schools has written additional grants and planned a Summer Bridge Academy and a Summer Accelerator, Career Accelerator program. So in this academy, there will be integrated STEM to eligible rising 6th and rising 9th grade students. Priority will be given to students who are at risk and are disproportionately impacted by COVID. Caswell County Schools will provide 10th through 12th grade students with priority considerations. And those again are students at risk and those who have been disproportionately impacted by COVID to participate in the Career Accelerated program. The Summer Career Accelerated program will focus on career development plans and summer credentialing, which is also what the state superintendent is also supporting for students throughout schools in North Carolina.
How many students attend these classes? How many positions do you have open and how many actually attend? I'm assuming last year was the same program?
It was similar. So
Okay.
we wrote some of the grants for the Summer Bridge. For instance, for the rising 6th graders and rising 9th graders. And we wanted to give kids the opportunity to experience some accelerated learning in addition to that. So there are roughly 60 students, 5th grade students, rising 6th grade students, and they will have the opportunity to take these courses on the middle school campus, which will of course give them additional exposure to that learning environment. And
I think if you're asking about last year, the summer session, we offered summer school to K-12 students, 6 weeks of it. I'm being perfectly honest, if I tell you right now off the top of my head, I can't remember how many kids. We offered the program at 2 elementary sites and combined 2 schools together and did the same at the other 2. And in fact, I think that's another question coming up later, but provide free meals and transportation and supplies. We're doing the same thing this year, but then the 2 special academies that Ms. Jones is describing are specific to, there's also research that says transitions, students who are transitioning from like certain grade spans, from 5th to 6th grade, from the elementary to middle, and then to the middle to high, that they could benefit from some added things. For example, the elementary students not being at the elementary school, going to Dillard, having an opportunity to be there first.
How do you encourage them, I'll use that word, to enroll and to come when you probably, I'd rather be swimming somewhere.
And that's a good question. So just to go back what I was saying before, the other students who are coming in, they're having the opportunity to engage in things such as Minecraft. And we know kids are very excited about that. It's technology driven. It's also giving them the opportunity to experience and apply math and science, and it's hands-on. The credentialing part of it with our drones and microbits, these are things that kids like. and their learning. And those are the pieces that will attract the students. So 60, looking at 60 students rising into sixth grade, and then 30 at the middle, rising to ninth grade, and then another 30, and then of course the credentialing camp. And the first session is a focus on supporting those essential skills needed to move forward with EOC and EOG. And then the second session, it is to enhance those and to apply them.
I guess my answer is still not, how do we encourage these kids to do that? That banana pudding can be the best banana pudding in the world, unless you get somebody to eat it, it ain't good at all. So your program really may be great, and I applaud you for doing that. But how do we get the students from point A to point B?
Well, I think definitely the relationship and the invitation from the teacher to the student. We have teachers who build great relationships with students. And of course, sometimes we can't fight against pre-planned trips, but I do believe that pre-planned summer trips to take the kids away. So I do believe that things like the Minecraft, the drone technology, the microbits, where students are applying, and coding, where students are applying the reading, the writing, mathematical concepts, and the STEM. I do believe those are things that will attract them.
I'm a great believer in metrics, especially if you're trying to measure performance or effectiveness of programs. How many years have you been doing summer learning like this? And how do you measure the effectiveness of it?
Well, this is the first year we've done it like this with the grants. And I really think it is a testament to elementary and secondary collaborating together. We've become a stronger team. And when we're looking at that vertical articulation and vertical alignment of curriculum, instructional practices, assessment, and then, just making real world scenarios and learning for students. It does start with that great foundation, as Ms. Bowes had mentioned before, and then building upon that.
And that's a great question. We don't have anything against what we're doing this summer because it's so different. With the STEM and the technology and the code and the drones and the hands-on experiences, to kind of answer Mr. Mascagle's question is, it's that type of instruction that we hope will attract the kids versus saying, you're going to come sit at a desk in a straight row for 3 weeks. So I think it's the type of instruction that we're doing, the integration of what we're trying to do, and not just have this not creative opportunities for kids to learn during the summer. The other good point I think is that we're doing it Monday through Thursday, so kids still have the opportunity, or parents have the opportunities for the weekend. We think that it's meaningful during those 3-week sessions. Then we give them a break, then we come back again for 3 weeks, and then they get another break. So by no means is it designed or structured to be punitive in nature. It's more that we've identified kids, we've identified a process that we want to support these kids. And research says that the more opportunities you have and combat that summer learning loss by giving kids an opportunity to be in school and still be engaged, We think that this program will be successful, so the metrics will come, what will we do in 23, 24 compared to what we did at that point.
Well, I mean, that's the point I was making. So, and I fully assume you don't have 10 years of history of this, but what are you, my question basically revolves around what are your plans on measuring? I mean, it'd be great. I'm not sure we really want to spend a lot of time and effort to make sure these kids get new high scores in their video games. But I'd be more concerned that they get high scores in their performance.
Absolutely.
And I think that to me is probably the most important thing to do. To measure the effectiveness in the right direction. Where we're really providing a stronger educational foundation for these kids through these programs. Yeah, I'd be very interested in your plans on how you're going to do that.
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, I won't touch on every grade level, but every grade level and every subject has certain assessments. For example, there's something we use called a spelling inventory. It lets us know how well a child is doing in phonics. All of the elementary teachers give that spelling inventory at the beginning of the summer. We give it again at the end of the summer. Even though the state doesn't provide us ways to look for certain metrics, we look for certain things. If we know that that phonics piece is a huge priority, we have started to do that ourselves over the summer. But I've had to have reading camp for a couple more years than we've been doing this K-12 plan. So that's one example.
Yeah, I missed out on phonics when I was going to school. So are there any open positions?
I'll keep you in mind. We've got to get enough staff.
Since this class starts next Monday, how many have already signed up?
So the unfortunate thing for us is, and I'll be honest, I've been scrambling this week and so have everybody at the schools. We invite students, the state assessments that we give, even in reading and in DIBELS, we're not able to give, and the window doesn't close until the end of May or the 1st of June. So right now we have invited a high number of students. I can't even really give you like a percentage estimate. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but we have as of today still updating and getting students and parents who are calling and saying the students will come, and teachers still calling and saying, you know, I haven't heard from you. We would really like for this child to come, just because all of the testing metrics, like the ones that y'all have here, they come in at the end of the year. So that makes even more students eligible, but we don't have group numbers. We may have individual scores. So we're able to start reaching out to parents. Say, will you come? You know, can you send your child? And I can tell you that I plan for at least a quarter to 30% of our students to come. That's really all I can give you right now.
So you don't know how many have already signed up for the classes beginning Monday?
I have charts that are ongoing that say how many have we invited, how many have accepted, how many have declined, and how many are still unknown. So I watched a couple of them change this afternoon, but I have not totaled them up, Mr. I have not.
Okay, thank you.
Well, how many have accepted?
This is Mr. Dickerson.
Mr. Dickerson.
Yes, how many have accepted? You said that was one of the variables that has been presented to you. How many students have actually accepted?
I have, the charts are still divided into 4 different schools, and I have not totaled those. As I looked and called some schools today and asked them to update them based on responses they got from parents today. So I apologize. I was not aware that would be a question tonight, but I'm happy to get that information and get it back to you.
We will provide that information to either Mr. Miller when we go back to the office tomorrow. Sure.
Well, while y'all get while y'all are getting that together, earlier I couldn't get this question in because it got sidetracked, but one of the other speakers talked about teacher supplements and working toward that. And I apologize for not entering this in written form, but I've been really hammered on my job here lately. But when the teacher supplements are being talked about, something that has not been mentioned is I would like to know the amounts of what the North Carolina Senate enacted that goes toward teacher supplements. Didn't Senator Berger attend a meeting with Dr. Carter and that was talked about, and there's been state money allocated toward that end? And the second thing I would like to know from the school board is, in light of all the COVID money that was given to the county, the school system got roughly, what, twice as much as the county government did. I would like to know why a lot more of that money was not put toward that. There ought to be enough there to fund it in perpetuity for a long time to come. I'd like to know exactly what happened to that money and why it wasn't dedicated to go more toward the teachers than what it was.
Okay, so this is Jeremy Teeter speaking. So I think part one to your question, that particular program is what the state's referring to as the low wealth supplement program. It's designed to be a 2-year program, and we do not know if it will extend beyond next school year. But the idea with that program is quite beneficial to Caswell County because it is structured in an effort to level the playing field for counties that do not have large tax bases. And so, for example, Caswell was one of the greatest beneficiaries per teacher in that attempt to level the playing field. So I think it was the maximum supplement this year that Caswell could award to a teacher was close to $4,000. And then you go down one county south in Alamance that's got a much larger tax base, and it was capped at $688. And so I think it is an exceptional program that is sort of the state's first attempt at addressing some of the inequities between rural counties and urban counties and the disparities with those tax bases. I would say that despite that, I think one challenge for Caswell is that you're situated smack in the middle of the Piedmont, and so you're surrounded by counties that consistently rank in the top 5 in North Carolina. We struggle with that where I work in Alamance. We're number 10 in the state, and we still fight counties in this area. But it's a great first step, and I think it did. Make a big difference. So part 2 of your question, the Board of Education in Caswell did elect to use a portion of their ESSER dollars to provide a supplement for teachers. So they landed at 10%, which is a pretty common number for this area. So, in terms of it being available in perpetuity, not quite. So, we've got one bucket of ESSER money that will expire in the fall of 2023, and then another bucket that will expire in 2024. So it'll certainly be a very helpful tool for the next couple of years for the school district to make supplements available. I think sort of the unique situation that the district is in is what will they do, or what can they do when the good fortune of ESSER money goes away? But it's I think they have been very smart in taking advantage of that now in the middle of this employment crisis that we're seeing in all sectors of employment. I know that was a long answer, and so happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Okay. Yes, I do have a follow-up question. So clear it up for me. You're telling me that the maximum supplement that Senator Berger got enacted was up to $4,000. Am I correct in that? And if that is right, how much of that was given to the teachers? Did they get a $4,000 supplement from the state this year and one from your COVID funding that came in? So in total, how much money was given as supplements?
So that's as far as the low wealth supplement that came as a consequence of the General Assembly's work. It sounds like from my colleagues that are in the district a little more every day, they were looking at about 3,500 here. The other portion, the supplement, it was a 10% supplement. So it would vary depending upon what a teacher makes because it's applied on top of their base pay. So a veteran teacher, let's say if they made $50,000 a year as a veteran teacher, they would have seen $5,000. A new teacher who's in their first year with the district, whose base pay is $35,000 or so, would have gotten $3,500. So it would just vary depending upon the experience of the teacher. But certainly it was a very good and it was very timely. And I can't imagine what the district's recruitment efforts would have looked like without that money because it's been hard with it.
So 10% and roughly 4,000. So a $35,000 a year teacher got $7,500.
So, I mean, that would be a fair average, but yeah, it would just vary, but that's a sort of a fair number.
Well, here's a fair question for you. Year after year, and this was going on before I was ever elected to this board. It's always a big push by the school system to get the county commissioners to fund teacher supplements. And we're made to look like the villains, like we are withholding Christmas time from the children. But we do it under constraints of the taxpayers of this county have to pay any additional money that is spent out for those teachers. Now, if you're asking for it year after year and we try to do what we can with the money that we have, and then you have a windfall year like this is the first time hearing about that. Why hasn't that been public knowledge? I mean, the good with bad, fellas. I mean, come on, I'm not trying to cause a hornet's nest to get stirred up here, but that's a windfall for the teachers, and that's not even been talked about that they've been taken care of. But if we don't supply the supplements, then we're made to look like villains. Where do y'all stand on this?
Well, I think, just historically, I think in the years that the county has been able to furnish local dollars for a supplement, it was generally $300,000 total that made its way to the district, and it was always appreciated. And I know I think it's been at least 3 or 4 years since that went away. I think it might have been my first year that I was away from Caswell that went away, and I think the board was pretty gracious, and they found a way to make it work out of their fund balance to transition, the teachers on that. And but where these new dollars are concerned, I know the teachers have been appreciative that the board prioritized the funding in that way, and it would have been discussed openly, in school board meetings, and I think these types of meetings are very valuable, and I think this is hopefully this can happen more frequently where we have conversations about what the district's doing. And so we are very fortunate, I think, that these state and federal resources are here.
Do you have a figure for the amount of COVID money that was given to the county schools? I know y'all got roughly twice what the county got, and I've requested those figures, but Mr. Miller hadn't had time to get them back to me. What did the schools receive out of COVID funding, just for general knowledge and everybody listening to this meeting so we'll all be on the same page? 10, 12 million, what was it?
Let me refer to the sheet. So it looks like 11.3 billion.
Wow, that's a lot of money. I hope y'all are being very good stewards of that, and you're putting some back to be able to fund these teacher supplements in the future. That's a lot of extra money there, considering the taxpayers of the county have agreed to pay for a new high school, and they're going to get a tax increase for that. I hope that we won't be pushed down this road in the future where you're asking for supplements again when you've got that kind of money at your disposal.
Well, and I think, and certainly, we do have, as I stated earlier, the federal government's imposed a sort of a narrow time window on those dollars. And so come December of 2024, all of these dollars are set to expire. So I think the board will be able to do that for a couple of more years, and they certainly will. And so then from there, they'll have to regroup, but it would be nice.
Brother, when I get a bonus from my employer, if it's a good job done and they say, hey, you know what, here's some extra funding, we've taken care of you, I can set that back. An amount of money that high in the millions, you should be able to plan for the future and save that money and allocate it on an ongoing basis to take care of our teachers. And that in turn will take care of our students, and we will have better results, and we won't have low reading test scores, low math test scores, high dropout rates. and be able to blame it on the fact that we can't recruit teachers, because the money is there to fund these teacher supplements and take care of them. I mean, Dr. Carter makes more than the governor makes in a year running a small school system like Caswell County. Can't we take care of our teachers?
Mr. Dixon, this is Andy Terrell. With the budget figures that we gave Mr. Miller is outlined in there how we're going to use our money going through 2024. And so we hear what you're saying. And so we have been good stewards of our funds, and it's all been laid out for at least ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 monies and what we're using those for going forward. And so one part of that is the teacher retention turnover supplement that we have built in there that was approved by our school board. Yes, sir.
Okay, I got a better way of looking at this. If we want to talk about uncertainties and money expiring, how much do you have in your unrestricted fund balance for the school system?
That figure at the close of last fiscal year, that was $2,583,937.
Wow. You know, the interest off that would be a big chunk toward, procuring the money for teacher supplements on an ongoing basis.
Weren't you given that information? Mr. Miller? Weren't you given our fund balance?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
And I forwarded that to all members of the board
Okay.
on 5/25.
Good point.
So do you have that information?
I know Mr. Dickerson has some issues receiving his email right now. We're working to correct that with some of the technology we have. But it was emailed on 5/20.
We got to get something for me to receive it on first, fellas, because my county device is inoperative and has been for several months now. So we got to do something on that end. Mr. Miller, if you're listening, I need some kind of device because I need to access my county email.
Yes, sir. That's what I just explained.
We move to the next question.
Yes, sir.
All right, Ms. Jones.
Yeah, so the next question is, Dillard has even lesser proficiency rates. What's being done to correct Dillard's problems? How many students graduated from Dillard? And so our answer is Caswell County Schools continues to provide support to teachers through aligned curriculum resources, research-based instructional strategies and practices, and assessments, which provide student data to assist teachers in preparing instruction, to increase mastery of skills, and to increase proficiency percentages. Caswell County Schools will continue to provide the summer learning opportunities that we discussed earlier for students to assist with learning loss and proficiency of essential skills to increase these proficiency levels. Students also have the opportunity to participate in tutoring sessions to support the mastery of these essential skills. And the question, how many students graduated from Dillard? So there are approximately 170 eighth grade students who are promoted or will be promoted from Dillard to ninth grade at the high school.
So can I? Do you all have this sheet with pink highlights?
Yes,
Yes, sir.
Anybody had time to look at it? Well, I just got it.
we just got it all today.
Okay, under reading, Caswell County Schools, not proficient, 64%. Under math, 1, not proficient, 93%. So my question is, with tutoring and with summer school, can you cover all of these students that are not proficient?
Well, we can definitely invite, but just to speak to this, we just received this today.
Okay.
And so I would definitely like to look at our percentages. Okay. Yes, but I would still like to look at our percentages because depending upon when things are reported, there may be summer assessment feedback that isn't included in that.
Okay, I'm trying to keep this short. Do you think these percentages are close to correct or way off? If they're way off, I don't need to ask any further question.
I would like to pull together what we have and to share that because it's calculated and printed out in a different manner.
And I think that actually came from the state website.
Okay, well, my question, I'm trying to get to, does anybody on the board of school staff think these are way off or if they're close to correct? Because my question is, can this be corrected? Because summer school and with tutoring, because it seems to be a lot of students.
I think part of it, sir, is, and this is not an excuse by no stretch of imagination, that someone could say, you were totally off base. And I will accept that. But if you look at 2021, okay, we're coming off being shut down from schools where we were doing remote learning. Our teachers did a fabulous job, our kids and our parents did a fabulous job with remote learning, but it's not like sitting in the classroom. And that came, it did have an impact, I think, on scores, just not in Castle County, but, throughout the state. I think that, if you looked at ours, and again, you nailed it, you threw it out there, 93%, but the state of North Carolina was only 75%. So we were at the state level, but the state only had 25% of the kids pass that assessment. And so I'm thinking that was an odd year as far as saying, we're coming off of COVID and coming off of remote learning and coming back into school in a plan B scenario before we got back to plan A. I do think that did have an impact. Now, with that being said, I do think that we have some things in place that will address those kids and those skills and kind of backfill those things that these kids need going forward. I do think that we do have some strategies to make that happen. That answers your question, sir. Next question, Mr. Miller.
Or, yes.
So this question was, please explain the K-12 summer learning program and the cost of $3 million in ESSER money. Our summer learning opportunities can increase student skill and knowledge. They can also eliminate some summer learning losses. Naturally, every summer, students go backwards, and that's another research-based fact. So the more we can get them in summer, even if we don't see a year's worth of gain, like we'd all like to see, and everybody become proficient, we can at least mitigate them from going backwards and hopefully have them move forward some. But since it was, summer learning opportunities are also essential to increasing their student skills and even mitigating the loss due to COVID. I mean, again, that was a research-based strategy that the state and federal government came up with. So they even said that we are required to utilize some of the ESSER funds to provide learning opportunities. They gave us certain percentages. All of those ESSER funds that we've been talking about, how many millions of dollars, it came with requirements on how we could spend them. We have
So in addition to that, we have our summer learning program, which we discussed previously, that gives our eligible K-12 students the opportunity to receive instruction and social emotional support and the grade acceleration that we talked about before with the transitions and the credentialing opportunities.
And we've talked about you being good stewards of the money. We looked last year after the summer learning program, and we prioritized that there was a need to provide more continuity. We had a lot of teachers burn out. We had to kind of piecemeal, and some students had more than one teacher during those sessions. So this year we wanted to try and encourage even more teachers. We added a bonus last year, but then this year we added a bonus and retooled part of that. We wanted to look at, can we get the same teacher in there the whole session so they know the student, so they know the student needs, and we're not regrouping. So we also used some of the ESSER funds and the summer money to this year provide certified teachers bonuses for coming in and teaching 3 weeks, if they'll do at least 3 weeks of the 2 different sessions. That helped us staff it more so than was easier this year than last year. So we continuously look for things like that and ways to improve and how should we spend those funds. But we will certainly do needs assessment, look at our feedback from this year and last year again, when we start to plan our summer learning for 2023 and 2024. And I think the paper you got with the budget for the summer learning noted 2023. But if there's funds still available, then we certainly want to offer the same K-12 program to everybody in 2024 before those funds expire. And then I skipped the question. Yes, sir.
Skip the question.
Yeah, that's why I was going back. I apologize, everybody. I flipped my page. There was another question about why Stony Creek does not have pre-kindergarten. So a lot of that answer is going to be linked to funds. I learned one thing in this job. We might get money, but everything you get has all of these attachments as to how you can spend it. We don't receive any state funds from DPI to provide preschool services. We complete and review an annual application with the Caswell County Partnership for Children to receive preschool funding. They utilize NC pre-K funds. Since we're a public school system, we receive less North Carolina pre-K funding per child than a private school setting. For example, if it was a daycare or another private setting, they would receive $650 a month. But for our slots that we get, we only receive $511 a month per child. But to sustain everything we need to have a pre-kindergarten and have it effective, we supplement that money because we want to make sure that students have instructional supplies, transportation, the free meals and snacks and everything that they should have. So we use Title I funds to provide 3 teacher assistants for the 3 classes that we do have at the other schools. We are funded 54 slots by the Partnership for Children. We can have 18 students in a class, so that's 3 classes. The preschool classrooms have to meet Department of Child Development Early Education licensure requirements. The facilities and services all have to meet several different agencies worth of services. Caswell County Schools, we've developed those 3 sites at North, Oakwood, and South. Each site has to have a ratio of 1 teacher and 1 teacher assistant per 18 students. There are other special requirements for the students to be placed in the NC pre-K classrooms. The student and the family must complete an application that provides required documentation that there are risk needs. Family level of household income is the primary eligibility requirement right now. There are additional secondary requirements such as military status, ESL status, documentation of educational and developmental risk. We have to assess the students. Once the applications are complete, they're reviewed by the Partnership for Children. Even though we help with the 54 slots, they review the applications. Families that meet the eligibility requirements have the option to select any of the preschool sites. So for example, they can choose Oakwood, but the first 18 people, since there are 18 slots at Oakwood, but then when you get to person 19, they can choose from any of the other slots. So wherever you are on the list, you can choose which site if it's not full.
And
We don't house a licensed,
That's rough.
Few minutes and then you can ask your question.
Okay.
we don't house a licensed preschool classroom at Stony Creek at this time. We are challenged, we have some challenges in developing a pre-K classroom under those Department of Child Development Early Education licensure requirements. Some of those are limited facility space and challenges to recruit enough pre-K eligible children to appropriately serve the program. NC Pre-K has a prescribed eligibility standard that does not allow us to just accept other preschool students and receive services in that preschool class, NC Pre-K classroom. However, the children and families that are from Stony Creek that meet the North Carolina Pre-K eligibility requirements can participate at those other sites. Historically, there are about 4 to 6 families that meet those eligibility requirements at Stony Creek. These families have enrolled their child in the other pre-K sites, whether it's where, I want to say Rainbow and Daycare, but wherever the partnership contracts. So for us, it's North, Oakwood, and South.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Stony Creek is in my district,
Yes, sir.
and I represent a lot of the families in that district.
Yes, sir.
I don't know, and I guess I should have asked up front, if the Stony Creek students that are interested, do they have to transport their kids to these other schools, or is transportation provided?
We have had historically some of those things happen, but every year we have to reanalyze what are our current laws and the current regulations that they give us to work under. And I'll be honest, I would have to check this year to see where we are with that.
I can go.
Okay,
Okay, go ahead, Ms.
I'm
Tam.
a Stony Creek resident. They're having to take their children to church.
okay. And the other question that I want to ask relative to Stony Creek is not related to K. Why are we keeping Stony Creek open?
I can answer some of that.
Me too.
Back in 1991, when we started doing the bond for North and South Elementary, $300,000 was spent on the septic system at Stony Creek. Stony Creek, in my opinion, should have been closed then, 1992. We closed 6 schools, we opened 2, North and South, and we closed 6. But that was one of the main reasons that Stony Creek stayed open. Enrollment is always less than 200. You still want to provide the same number of services, but you might not always have the funds to do that. Very good question.
Now, us living over there, why would we want to put our children on a bus that's going to take that long to go north or south? You know, both my children are Stony Creek graduates, actually 3 of them are. And there was no way I was gonna have them ride the bus that long. So that school being there is like in the Stony Creek district, us living there.
And I understand
Go ahead.
what you're saying, but it seems to me that from a financial standpoint, Stony Creek is too costly, and we could direct those funds to pre-K for everybody, or somewhere.
Just another couple of comments. One of the comments that comes up is when I first came in, we had like 20 students. That was a long time ago. Now we're down to 6. It's less, better, but at the same time, if you're in the Stony Creek School District and you live up by Williamsburg Mills, that's a long ride.
Yeah.
If you closed it, the ride would be even longer. And the same thing with people that live in the Mountain Hill area. If you live in Mountain Hill, some people went south, but you're actually closer to Oakwood School, but you'd have to come through. Coming through Virginia would be a better route to get to, but the laws would not allow you to go through that. So to answer your question, you know, those funds could be diverted, but you've got to me, you have to look at the long haul of what the children would be doing. They probably be on the buses 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours before some of us did. And the enrollment is not getting any bigger. In 1967, we had maybe 6,000 students. Now we have less than 3,000. That's why Stony Creek was able to get over 200 kids. And I understand your standards point, you know, that's their district. Everybody wants their school, but when we closed those 6, same argument came up.
The next question from the commissioners, what are your plans for these programs and employees after federal money run out? That's one thing that we are constantly looking at is when you have grant funding, when you have ESSER money, you have money given to the state and federal government, is at some point those funds may run out. And so we were very, very intentional about how heavy do we go into personnel, because as we go through this, do we want to have all these personnel that we won't be able to fund? The flip side of that is when we do advertise jobs with ESSER funds and you advertise jobs as grant funded, lots of times that's not a job that someone wants as their first choice, because they know, just like with Title I, it may run out at the end of that year. So what we're doing and what our strategy is to look at the personnel, look at what they are assigned to do, and look at that data to see if they are impacting our children the way that we thought they would impact. And so it comes down to prioritizing, how do you sustain that? And that would be looking for other grants, using other grant monies to continue those programs that are being successful. And we would also seek other funding sources for priorities such as teacher supplements to assist in making teacher salaries remain competitive with other districts. Local supplements are provided in surrounding counties and throughout North Carolina, but we know what we have in ESSER 3 and what's been budgeted there for teacher supplements. We know at 2024 that will come through.
How many teaching vacancies does the system have? These include any positions currently filled with full-time talent. So these numbers are current as of yesterday, and of course, we are still doing hiring and supplementing the ESSER funds and helping with that, as well as, you know, Fairfield County in general, the county. For Bartlett Yancey High School, there's 10 vacancies. 4 of those are new vacancies for this year, whether it be people resigning or retirement. 2 of those last year were covered by long-term subs. The math coach position, which also falls under that 10, was vacant all year long. And then 3 of those, they were absorbed by other staff members. The literacy coach assisted with covering classes, as well as 2 were absorbed by department members, which means they were probably teaching during their planning periods or something like that in order to work together for those vacancies. For Dillard Middle School, they had 3 math vacancies that were absorbed by staff. There are 2 new science vacancies. One is a retirement and another one is not returning. There's 1 ELA vacancy now. There was a second one that was filled by a long-term sub, but they have found someone to fill that position. So there's only 1 ELA vacancy now. There's 1 CTE and there's 1 art that was a long-term sub this year. It was actually covered by 2 subs. And then their math coach, they have a vacancy there. For North Elementary, there are 2 vacancies. One is a new one this year. A teacher is relocating to a different district. The other one was covered by a long-term substitute who was a certified teacher, certified retired teacher. And he stayed at North all year long. Oakwood, they have 3 vacancies, all of them. Well, there's a EC resource teacher, a second grade teacher, and then a EC self-contained teacher. The EC positions are always hard to find. They are hoping that they will be recommending an EC resource teacher and a second grade teacher soon. And then South and Stony Creek have no vacancies currently.
Out of the 10, how many are teachers are at bar against high school? Teachers, not staff or whatever.
Is it 10 teachers?
It's 10 teachers, 10.
No,
10
no,
teachers.
how many total?
teachers?
How many total do you have?
So taking out the coach, media specialist.
And they want to know how many teachers.
How many teachers?
Total.
Yep.
That was, yeah, I would say
I'm 50 to 60.
50.
How many?
I'm 50 to 60.
So we don't know a definite number?
I mean, I know.
Okay.
We can get that information for you, sir.
Well, I'm just kind of wondering what percentage,
Okay.
if you got 50 and you got 10 vacancies, you're 20% teachers down.
Oh, yeah.
And I realize it's tough to get them. I understand. How does staff, you made this comment a couple of times, how does staff absorb whatever you, as in teaching thing?
They cover
How's that work?
classes during their planning period, and so, you know, teachers at the high school have an hour and a half planning, so during that time, they would go cover another class.
Okay, and out of the 50 teachers you have, how many of them are completely certified? We don't. And if you want to get back to me on that, that'd be fine too. That'd be fine.
I would like to add at this point, I mean, we've talked about these issues. I'd love to see the board continue to talk and work together towards some solutions. I think we need to understand a lot of the problems they're statewide problems. I'm good friends with the head of the teacher education department at Campbell University, and he says they enrolled less teacher candidates this year than they ever have. They've had to cut their department. And I'm on the board for Guilford College, and they're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I think all of us need to come together and petition to the state and wherever else. Teacher working conditions are hard. They're constantly scrutinized, and like these scores right here, they feel like that's an indicator of their work. And, you know, a lot of it is not. I think we've all got to get creative. It's not just a Caswell County problem. They're not graduating enough students from our colleges to come into education to fill the vacancies in the state. And so us being a rural, low-wealth district, we're gonna feel that difference first, ahead of some of the other wealthier districts. Another thing for me to know, that, and I know I'm way off again, but even on the data that's here that we were talking about, that's comparing us to that was a year of remote learning, and we had people who were having trouble accessing the internet. We provided resources. We did everything we could possibly do. But it's comparing us to high wealth districts that do have fully certified staff, didn't have trouble with the internet. The state does provide us a lot of other metrics to look at versus just comparing us to the state of North Carolina, and allows us to look into some of those little windows of what might be going on. I don't know how much of that we can share and how much of it is private, but those are all things we look at regularly. And I think for the teacher ed, for the recruiting problem and the vacancies, we all need to accept it's going to take 4 years. Even if we pushed and got enough kids in colleges this year, it'd be 4 years before they graduated and came to fix the problem. I mean, it's ongoing. But I will say for me in elementary, and I don't know high school and middle school, the percentage of vacancies this year with that supplement is less than it has been in years. They're willing to stay versus go, let me cross the line and get paid more.
And I'd like to also add, we also have our teacher cadet program that we restarted at Bartlett Senior High School. And we have students who are very excited about staying in Caswell County schools. They've already said, I want to be an elementary school teacher, a middle school teacher, a high school teacher. And we're calling our alma maters. And, you know, we're fortunate to pick up some teachers at schools, at colleges where we attended because we love Caswell County schools. We are, and we have to continue to be marketers of our school system.
One quick question on the vacancies. Affect, you said there was 3 math vacancies at Dillon.
Yes.
I guess the correct way to ask this is how do you plan to handle it if you can't get the teachers? And I'm asking because a few years ago at Dillon, we had a math vacancy. I think the regular teacher came in for a week in August. And then that math class was handled by a sub all the way through to December. That sub did not have a mathematics degree. And it hurt a lot of students.
I have a child, Brian, you probably have one in Math 1 this year. And they've had 5 teachers because no one would stay. So then we finally had Mr. Thomas, who was certified math, who's been there forever. Not forever, but since my other ones went through. He taught all day long. They collapsed classes and put them together in the media center. And our kids were taught by a certified math teacher for Math 1 this year.
I guess that answers my question. What do we plan to do if we don't get them? We have 1 or 2 somebody that can teach this math.
Yes, sir. And just similar to what Ms. Stanley shared, we do have 2 other math teachers who we know who will be there. And they have been very instrumental and collaborative and working during their planning blocks. And just to make sure that there isn't a substitute in there who doesn't have that math background.
And we offer to tutor our students too.
Absolutely, yes,
Yeah.
on
My
top
child
of
has
that.
been tutored after school, virtually and face-to-face by these math teachers.
Ms. Stanley,
Yes.
been kind of quiet tonight. My question is, you said you had 5 math teachers come into that one class.
That's correct.
Why would 5 math teachers leave?
But I'm gonna tell you one thing, children are in a world. And so they're.
So this is a particular type of situation that money does not help.
Correct. Yes.
You have no discipline.
It's not that we don't have this,
Well,
but I mean, children are mean. They're just not like it was when we were growing up. I'm just gonna put it out there. You know, I couldn't go to middle school again. I wouldn't go to high school again for this. But children are mean, and so they run teachers off. And like I said, we've had them come in, some that were not certified and some who had no clue what they were doing. And they couldn't teach the class.
so my point being that there's something wrong with the side of the money with some of this.
Exactly, well, yes.
And so throwing more money behind some of it is not
To do
going to help
discipline, yeah.
until we do something different.
Well, I'd like to also add that, so one of the transitions went to a district, maybe 4 or 5 districts over for career advancement. And others went to higher paying districts.
But to your point, I think part of it goes back to this idea of we have to recruit, then we have to retain. And so what's that retention piece look like? And, someone, we have, if you're a new teacher, we have a beginning teacher program. We give you a mentor. So what's that look like? What support structures are we giving new teachers coming in to our buildings? And the other difficult thing is, especially for momentum and professional development, is if you have turnover in your schools, then that means that you have to start back at to train a teacher that comes in brand new to that building, and the culture of the building and the things that we're trying to do. But I do think recruitment is key, and then once you get them here, you gotta keep them here, and you gotta retain them, whatever that looks like, whether it's support, resources, professional development, whatever that looks like. I think it's not a thing, I think it's multiple things that keep teachers. in
I understand what you're saying, but to me, looking at it, money is not that situation, in that particular situation. There's something going on with those 5 teachers besides money. Those teachers,
Mr. McVeigh, some of those teachers were people who did not have a teaching certificate,
okay,
who wanted to become a teacher. Once they got in the classroom, realized that's not what they wanted to do.
understand that too. Still, there's 5 of them. Okay, go ahead.
One final comment from me on this subject. The teacher cadet program sounds a little like the teaching fellows program that the state had some years ago. Is there something close to that?
No, that's completely different. The cadets are kids who aspire to be teachers that, but they don't get any money. Teaching fellows got money to go to school. They had to commit to a teaching position once they got out of that. And I think it's a program that should have never dropped, but they did. The same thing with principal fellows, the same thing.
And I agree, that's why I raised this.
Yeah.
So one of the things we might be able to look at is making the teacher cadet program look something like the old teaching fellows program.
It's good for
Does anybody need to take a break? Y'all want a break for just a minute?
Yeah.
You do? Okay, let's take a break. Let's take about a 5-minute break. We'll come right back to it. Thank you. Zoom meeting. I had one more question. We were talking about the 5 teachers that went through that class. How are we set on principals?
So right now, we have BY's covered. We just named a principal at Dillard. We still have a assistant principal vacancy at Dillard because she moved to be the principal at North. And we will have a new principal at Oakwood. And the same principal will be at Stone Creek. And we will have a vacancy that we're trying to fill now. And then interviewing for South.
So we've had some principals.
We have, it's been a combination, some are retiring, some are leaves the district. We felt good that we had some connections with some that are coming back, and that we could take an AP and move them into a principal. Then we had somebody, an instructional coach with an administrative license within the school that could been working with the teachers and the parents and the kids, could be elevated to be the principal. So that's always a good thing. Kind of keep some consistency, and also you can prepare your APs to be principals. So,
Well, I was going to ask you, what kind of turnover that we have pretty much compared in years past? How is our turnover with principals?
I think this year will be the most in a while, just because of retirement and going to other systems. Pretty much in the last 3 years, we've been real consistent as far as the number of principals. It might stretch out to 4. I'm just trying to remember about Dillard, but we've been, pretty consistent for a 3-year period, which is great. Because if you turn over, then, it's difficult to come in and get things done in 1 year. People think change can happen in 1 year, but it usually takes 3 years to make any significant change. So we've been very fortunate about having principals come and stay, and then being able to either recruit people that were with us to come back, or be able to promote from within.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I think the next string are assigned to me. So the next question was, how many Caswell students are attending school outside of our counties. So if they're going out of the county, they're either going to private or charter. We don't have data that we can track on private, but charter schools, the school system does get good data because they have to send the rosters to the school system so that we can verify they are Caswell County students. The latest number as of the last month of bills that were paid reflected 234 students. I'll say that number is consistent with what I saw about 5 years ago when I was physically paying the bills here. And that's hanging a little over 10% of the enrollment. And so I think that's pretty consistent. There are some districts that would envy being around that 10% mark. There are some districts where they see half of their children go to charter schools. I think of Northampton County Schools and Washington County Schools are two examples that come to mind where half or more of their students go to charters instead of their home schools. But 234 sounds like a lot, but as a percentage of the student enrollment, that's a pretty normal and reasonable number, and it's been consistent with the past few years.
How much does that cost us approximately?
Yeah, so it's the rate is about the county appropriation and fines and forfeitures have to follow those students on a per pupil basis. So you're looking at a couple of $100,000 a year that follow those students from Caswell County.
It's something else that we don't talk about, like you said, private school. Some parents send their kids to private school to pay their own tuition in public school. Then you got homeschool. Caswell County has double-digit homeschool, and that's a choice people make. But it doesn't affect our funding per se. But like I said, we used to have like 6,000 students. Now we're a little less than 3,000. So if you added that to 34, that would be a big number. But like I say, people make choices. Double digit. Is it? I think it's 2 kids can be a homeschool. And at one time we had like 30. I don't know what the number is now, but we'll get it.
So next question, please explain indirect costs associated with ESSER monies. So for practically every federal grant that a school system receives, the districts are allowed to assess what the federal government calls indirect costs. And so the idea behind that concept is local resources are being used to administer that grant. So if you have employees that are being paid from that federal grant, someone on your local payroll, someone on your local HR is servicing those employees, or we're providing utilities for that program to operate. And so the general idea is that the district can recoup some overhead costs. So specifically, we get a percentage that we're allowed to charge, and it varies from school system to school system. This year, Caswell County's rate was 5.428%. That it was allowed to assess. The district here will assess that in June. And so I sat down and I took a look at Caswell's numbers the other day for the purposes of this meeting, and isolated to ESSER money when Caswell recoups indirect costs from that, it'll be $172,000. And that would be, and that's not something really the board will have had a conversation about yet in terms of what they might do with that when they set it to the side. But we'll have about 172,000 in Caswell that's assessed for indirect costs. So the next question is, please explain the ESSER monies for HVAC. 550 that are from ESSER 2, and then $1 million from ESSER 3, light duty 140. And so one thing that I want to say in general about ESSER money, it's a little different for us in school systems than our money that counties are receiving. We've got a lot of middlemen that have put their hands in the cookie jar and set restrictions for us between the General Assembly and the State Board of Education. And so anything that a school system spends from ESSER money has to be very tightly married to the notion of either surviving during the pandemic or responding to the effects of the pandemic. And so the state rules graciously allowed us to consider HVAC and air connected to air quality, right? So there was a concern in a lot of districts that have old HVAC systems and the ability of those HVAC systems to pump in pure air or cleaner air. And so that's an approved expense, is anything that you're doing to upgrade an HVAC system to make it have cleaner air. And an example of what Caswell has done, they've had assessments conducted on their units. They sanitized the coils in those units, and they installed some filters to improve the air quality. The state and federal government have been very clear that it can't be used to replace a broken HVAC unit, or it cannot be used to replace a chiller that's failed. So the mechanical and electrical failures are still very much so a responsibility of localities and the upkeep of facilities. But any type of supplemental measure to improve air quality is allowed. And I would say too, I think in the request, as noted in the question, there's $140,000 outlined. That's a fairly consistent number for the district in its efforts to make those improvements. I think in the last summer, the district had to make a very large investment to replace the chiller at Dillon Middle, for example. And so it's a fairly common expenditure, especially as some of these facilities start to age. So that's the short of it, is normal mechanical failures are still a local responsibility and not an ESSER allowable expense.
Do you contract most of that stuff out, or is it done with the maintenance?
So
I
know for the sanitizing and the filter work,
contracted that out just because it was a specialized technique to get in there and clean those coils. We did it with Brady. And they came in and they did all our schools. They did it over the holiday break to do it while kids were out. We changed all our filters to work 13 filters at the same time. So we're trying to increase the air quality in our schools. We also have to assess all our HVACs. So we come up with a capital plan of what that looks like.
When you say you changed the filters, but your maintenance staff do that?
They did that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So the next question, I know that we talked about this a little bit with Mr. Dickerson, which is pertinent to the supplements. And so I think this was a great thing for Caswell County. I don't think this district's ever been able to award a 10% supplement rate. And just to give you some context for how major that is sort of the entry level teacher supplement in Alamance County and Person County, right? So that really gets you to the table for some serious competition. And then, and a little feisty with y'all because you did steal some teachers from Alamance this year. So it was effective. And so it will continue, I believe, for a couple more years while that money is available to do so. And that certainly goes a long way. And in that particular percentage model, as I was explaining earlier, really does reward those teachers with a lot of experience because it compounds on their higher base salary that they get from the state. But it really did get you in shooting distance for a lot of your neighbors in a meaningful way. And I don't know what will happen when ESSER money goes away. A lot of districts are going to be trying to solve the ESSER cliff that we're calling it. But yeah, it was a great thing, and I think a smart investment. The next one, has any or all ESSER 2 monies been spent? And if so, what are the outcomes on such items as dropout prevention and after school tutoring? So I made a chart for this just to show the three major waves of ESSER dollars. ESSER 1, the district to date spent a little over $763,000. There's a little over $11,000 left, and that will be gone by the close of this fiscal year. That phase 1 of ESSER money expires permanently September 30th of this calendar year, but like I say, it will be gone well ahead of that. ESSER 2, a little over 1.9 million spent to date with a hair over $1 million left. It will expire next September 23. ESSER 3, $1.5 million spent to date, almost 5.3 left. And that one, it was recently extended. It was supposed to expire in September of 24. Federal government's pushing that out to December of 24. So there will be some extra months there that was not originally planned on. But then in terms of the outcomes, I'd say that the staff at the district is regularly monitoring that, and I think we'll continue to do so. I think for most districts, ESSER 1 was what we all depended upon just to survive the pandemic. When we were in the thick of the early stages, using it to buy personal protective equipment, using it to buy technology, and just completely adjusting our way of life. And ESSERs 2 and 3 have really largely been about life when we came back to school and school reopened again, and what's going to be done with air quality and what's going to be done with helping students catch up. And so I know these ladies talked a lot about some of the programming that's happening and is scheduled to happen. I think they've gotten some great feedback from you tonight about ways you think would be helpful in collecting data to demonstrate that progress. So, okay.
We answered all your questions that you submitted.
All right, you want to do this, any other you want to jump in and answer these questions, Brian?
Sure, if
I
that's
have
okay
a
with.
couple more questions
Couple of more.
before we leave our section. So first of all, I want to let you know any comments I have made or will make from my basic position that I believe the school board and school system are really trying to do the best thing for us. To believe there's any ulterior motives or anybody trying to get away with shenanigans. So my questions only come from the basic position that Castle County population is shrinking. We lost 5% over the last 10 years. Usually that means people say, oh, it's gloom and doom, and our tax base is going to go away, and we won't be able to afford this, that, the other. I think on the other hand, what people are not paying attention to is the fact that, look at Meta. That area there is growing like crazy. This lovely Danville casino. I lived in Kansas City when they first put in casinos, and everybody thought that was the best thing since sliced bread. And 10 years later, they were all saying, who ate our sliced bread? Because that all went away after people lost all the money they were losing. So at any rate, that will have an impact. It will have an impact on people driving through or even moving in up in the northeast corner. There's still pressure, and there's huge numbers of jobs coming into the RTP here. Big, well-paid jobs. So people that are coming to that area are coming in from Texas and California and other areas, and they can afford big houses. They can afford grand places, McMansions. And we look pretty attractive. Look at our land base. Sorry for the long lead-in, but we need to be prepared to either A, attract people into the county, or B, deal with people that move here anyway. And one of my big concerns is, and provide staffing for jobs that are around with well-trained, educated people. And my big concern is, if you look at these, at the numbers we've got, we don't present a really pretty picture. If people look at the school grades and these numbers, student performance numbers and stuff like that, without understanding the background that we have here. So my plea to our board and the school board and the school system is that must be our driving force, our driving thoughts, that change is coming. And we can either be run over by it, or we can be prepared for it. And Lord help us, maybe even lead a little bit. So we need to figure out how to do that. We're not going to do that by snipping at each other and making nasty comments and questioning things that are patently obvious and working off the assumption that there's something else going on. So my plea is, let's try to figure out how to work this together. One of the ways I know, and I've been on this board now for 3 years, and I know some of the first interactions we had with looking at the school board budget was saying, well, what the hell are they going to do with that one? Because there was no detail. Transparency is how you deal with those situations. And the more transparent you can become, the easier it is to explain it, the easier it is to measure it, the metrics again, if you will. So my last parting shot, thanks for one more question. My last parting shot at any rate is, has the planning board contacted either the school board or the school system with their input for updating the casual comprehensive plan?
Not to my knowledge.
No.
Well, things changed from the way that was supposed to happen. I'll bring that up in the next planning board meeting, but be prepared for that, because that sat unupdated for over 9 years. It's time to deal with the new census information. So to me, it's unconscionable to not get input from the school board and the school system. So I'll make sure it's done. Even if I have to do it myself. Thank you very much.
Brian's gonna ask the question. Anybody that wants to speak up, answer, side me. Go ahead.
Well, I'm happy to read a question if that's okay with you, Mr. Owen.
Oh, sure, that'll be fine.
So the Board of Education asks, what is your official position on supplements for teachers? Special note, the board needs to be aware that supplements in the past were for teachers only, not principals and directors, etc.
Anybody want to answer that besides me? Well, here's my personal feeling. For the first question, 3, 4, 5, I think they all fall on the same category. I think it's up to this board, this commissioner board, to give y'all a pot of money. When we give y'all a pot of money, being on the Board of Education, it should be up to you how you spend your money. Whether it is upgrading improvements, hiring a social worker, or giving teacher supplements. It should not be up to this board, in my opinion, for us to give teacher supplements. I said that several years since I've been on this board. I don't know when it started. I think you knew that this board was asked to give supplements, and that comes from a different pot of money. But in my opinion, it should be y'all that gives the supplements and does the planning for the upgrades and improvements. And we give y'all a pot of money and y'all distribute. That's what you're there for, to make those kind of decisions.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah, respond to it.
It depends upon how big the pot is.
Well, I understand that too.
That makes the difference.
I understand that.
When it first started, I was on the board, and it was earmarked that way, because the basic thing that the commissions provide is capital outlay and current expense. Those are the two stats. And the thing with supplements was, it was a separate pot of money, was beyond current expense and capital outlay. And that same point came up that you talked about before you even got on the board, you know, and it was a good point. But it was never enough money. If you took this money away from this, and put it over here, then that left that lacking. That was the rationale. But I understand your point, but if the pot is big enough, that can be done.
Well, it's up to this board to come up with that pot,
Right,
but it should be up to your board as to how you spend that.
I understand.
It should not be left to the commissioner, in my opinion.
I understand.
It shouldn't.
I've got a slightly different opinion, and you already heard what it was. It's this area of transparency. Now, the pot's only gonna be so big. And with every other department, we get literally a line by line item on how they built their budget request. So I think it makes a lot of sense for us to figure out how appropriate that amount of money is on the basis of where it's going. So it's, on the other hand, I think one of the downstream sides of that is there is a certain amount of that money that given to the school board, school system. And it's highlighted as this, but once you get it, you can spend it any way you want. I don't like it. I'd like to know where it's going and if it's appropriate.
We've tried to be transparent in that and giving detail. When we send the budget over, we just don't say, we need this much. We try to break it down and give you an idea of what kinds of things we're looking at.
And I will say that has changed. You know, it's gotten more and more.
Well, I would agree to disagree to a certain extent because the 2-point-something million budget's only got about 7 pages. 911 budget or Department of Social Service budget's got a whole lot more breakdown. So, you know,
One thing that we can do, so I'm gonna be working with the district as a contractor for the better part of a year coming up, starting in July. Alamance is furious with me, but we will, you know, I did a lot of work in Alamance the past 2 years because they were in the exact same spot. The two boards were in the exact same place there 5 years ago. And we developed a lot of reports that I think built some transparency. And, you know, once a year, we delivered a prior year review that would show the commissioners everything that the school system spent money on in the prior year and how it compared. And then we also have a monthly report that we prepare for the commissioners and elements that show them just sort of how things are progressing. And so I think there are some things that we can put in place that hopefully will continue when my contract's done. That will help sort of bridge those things. So definitely happy to work on that for y'all.
So, Mr. Chairman, would you like me to move on to question number 2?
You do number 2. I've covered 3 and 4 and 5 for diamonds.
So the Board of Education would like to know, how can we foster a good working relationship between the two boards?
you just hit the nail on the head, my opinion. There's no reason for these guys to meet, ever how many times y'all meet a year, us guys to meet, ever how many times and never the twain shall meet. I think that this board and that board should at least quarterly meet, sit down, do whatever you need to do, talk it out. We're spending it here. That's a great report. I won't be around. I don't do politics. I won't be around for this, but I think that is a great idea. And the only way that I see both boards moving in the right direction.
It used to be that way. Used to meet every quarter.
Needs to be there.
And somehow, I know how I got rid, but that's a good point. I've been there. I know what you're talking about. And there was nothing to hide. Need to be transparent. Because if you ask for $1,000 and you only spend 10, what happened to the 900? That's common sense. So I hope we could meet on a quarterly basis. We used to meet at the central office one quarter with the commissioners the next quarter. So That was an ongoing thing.
Continue on.
Question number 3, the Board of Education would like to know, in order for us to attract and keep highly qualified teachers and staff, we need funding. Will they supplement teacher bonuses?
I think they answered that question. That's pretty well been answered.
Question number 4,
Are you all happy with that?
But that's the money runs out then.
Yeah, we gotta.
We have a great relationship.
Whoever's on that board.
That's our biggest concern right now, is when the ESSER money does run out, we won't have anything for any kind of supplement. And we're attracting some people now and drawing some people back. But, you know, they can turn around and leave just as quick if the money is not, something's not done.
so question number 4, will they provide additional monies for social workers and other needed positions?
I mean, I know we've provided some money once or twice for social workers. How many social workers do you have now? Like one? But I thought you had hired, I thought
One time we had 2.
you had 2 at one time, and did what? Why did that second one phase out?
They left.
They left,
Yeah.
so that money was still, that we had put there was still available for the second social.
But we used that one for the first one.
And then at one point in time, there was a state grant that supported social workers, and that
The
grant.
grant funded position that we got the second.
Okay, I was trying to remember, we used school board money one time.
Yes, sir.
For that. Well, once again, as far as I'm concerned, we put our pot of money up there. So
But again, like Mel said, with the amount that we did, and then right now, especially with sheriff's department and social workers, with my child being in the school and what all's been going around schools, social workers and the sheriff present in school needs to happen, you know. That needs to be a main thing that is funded for sure.
Okay, moving on to question number 5, and the last question. The Board of Education would like to know, our schools continually need upgrading and improvements. How will the Board of Commissioners support it?
I think that was the same pot of money.
You can't do everything with that same
Everything
kind
has
of
the same
money.
pot of money. It depends on how big the fish pond is and how many fish is in it, right? I'm bothered. We've got 5 questions from whomever. Now, one of these 5 questions are about the safety of our kids. Not the first one. It's about money and supplements. My grandkids, my great grandkids are worth whatever. Somewhere, somehow, that has got to be addressed. This world is not getting any nicer. Made the comment, the kids were made. Well, it ain't just kids, it's me, adults too. I was made aware today that maybe there was a situation of some doors at the North School.
I was too.
I'm not putting anything out here, but that's unacceptable. I don't know whether it happened or not. I just had somebody tell me at the pharmacy. Where is the where is the children's safety come in when these 5 questions are all about money stuff? Doesn't matter how we treat the teachers if we're not taking care of kids.
I would think that would fall under upgrading and improvements as well.
I think it would probably fall under school resource officers also.
Yes,
Social.
that's social work, that's number 4 with the social workers.
Yeah, but last time I checked, social workers don't carry guns. These guys that goes into these schools, they don't care whether it's the chairman of the board or the local pharmacist is in there. They go in with one thing on their mind only. And I don't have any kids in the school system right now, but I worry about those that do. Yeah, that's all.
Another thing with number 5 that's helpful is as you're talking about that quarterly meeting structure, talking about facilities and even maybe having some kind of conversation about the development of the joint facilities plan, right? And I don't know, I know when I was last here, the county had a contractual relationship with Davenport, and I don't know if you still do. And so they're really effective in mapping out 5-10-year plans and forecasting, you know, how much is coming in from lottery, how much is coming in from Articles 40 and 42 that's earmarked for facilities. And I think that may be something good to work on in these quarterly meetings, is getting some kind of analysis of the resources available for facilities and capital outlay, and getting the two bodies to agree on a plan that's feasible over the next few years, and having that be part of the transparency and the dialogue, and working on a solution.
And to get back on the safety issue, we have been working on the safety for our schools, for the entrance areas, for the locks on all of the doors, using the cards where we can control everything from the office. You know, we can stop a card from being able to get in, but we have done a lot in looking for the safety of the children in our schools. And we have fought hard every year looking for, these ladies here have looked and worked hard at getting grants for SROs in our schools. And, I mean, we haven't, that is, safety has always been this board, you know, right at the top of everything that we're trying to do. I mean, we've got to keep the children safe, and we have worked hard at trying to do that. And, you know, I want you to know that safety is an issue that we look at, and we will be reviewing again as we get ready for another year.
Well, I worked in the chemical industry for 57 years. And whenever we talked about safety, ways to approach safety, you have administrative control, you have engineering control. And if you only have one, you haven't addressed the situation. And my understanding is the high school's got pretty good engineering control. Presumably associated with that with engineering control, there's administrative control. What I would, I had it down there, I didn't want to dominate me, but what I would think would something that would be should be a constant topic for us for our quarterly meetings would be review of the schools and school boards' long-term security plan. I'd like to see what that would look like. I would think that's something that if you don't have, you ought to have it, just like the county's got the comprehensive plan.
And a plan like that could probably be reviewed in closed session meeting.
That's what I
That is, I was getting ready
Education.
to say, we have security plans, but they're approved in closed session.
I'm talking
Because you
about a
don't want that
long-term.
information out in the public, as to how you're gonna handle different situations.
I think that to me is very important, and that's part of the transparency.
Would y'all like to try to schedule another meeting, or would you like for,
If we don't, it will never get done. So we'll do it now.
so you would like to try to schedule one now?
Yeah.
Or would you like for the
Or it'll be-
clerks to get together?
let's do it now.
Ma'am,
It probably might be best for the clerks to do it, and then they'll poll us to see what suits the
Check
schedule.
with the superintendent.
Yeah.
and-
They might do that.
we are all in agreement that we want to meet
Right.
quarterly.
Right.
So it just needs to be scheduled. Our board is in agreement, and I hear you all are saying the same thing,
Yes, ma'am.
and have a joint meeting.
So we'll have this call, but you should do a follow with us, if we all do the same. Then we'll get together. Is there anything else anybody would like to discuss? If not, we will recess our budget meeting until we need to adjourn. Okay, well, we need a motion. All right, I need a motion to adjourn. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, aye. All opposed, motion carried.
I need a motion. Baker has made a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
That'll second the motion. Any discussion? All in favor, indicate by raising your hand. Opposed, the same. We stand adjourned.